things like this, they will walk up this to reach up as high as they can, and then they'll leave it because they can't push this over. Okay. So basically anything from about that size and smaller, they'll walk it right down. Okay. Or if it's...
so they'll get rid of all of this?
Oh yeah, all this, they'll get rid of that completely.
Yeah. Honeysuckle, I think, is all I use.
Yeah, they'll walk all this stuff down. And some of this stuff is really toxic to them, but as long as that's not all they're eating, it's not a problem. Okay. I've never had a problem with a goat getting sick from eating toxic stuff, and we had tons of toxic stuff out there. But they always had a selection. So
would you put the fence line right along this first line?
I would let that fence line be dictated by where your garden beds are. Okay. So if you might want to put like we're talking about a temporary paddock, the training section. So what I like to do is I like to use goat panels or horse panels. They're the really heavy duty, you know, the cattle panels that people use to make arches and stuff. I don't like the cattle panels because they're asymmetrical shapes and they're graduated shapes, so it looks funky. For those arches, it bothers me every time I see them. Use a goat panel. They're all 4-inch squares. All of the squares are 4 inches. It would actually look nice. So anyways, I would go with something like a goat panel, which is going to be 4-inch square, which prevents any animals from getting their heads stuck. I have a story for you off camera about that. But you can get those panels and set them up to run in an area, and then you set up inside of that, just on the inside of that, the temporary step-in posts. Right. And then you put as many electrical wires as those insulators will hold. Okay? So it's like a wall of electricity. And then the goats will get close to the panel and they'll get zapped, and they will associate thing that looks like a fence wall with zapping. And then once they're not challenging that anymore, then you remove half of the wires and you step it in a foot or two. And you keep making that get smaller. Okay? And you keep taking it down until they will respect 2 strands of electric. One at, about nose height and one at shoulder height. And once they'll respect that, that's about the time that you could set up a temporary step-in posts around your yard and let them out there to mow your yard for you. Okay? So that's how you train them. So what I would probably do for here, since this is all overgrown and you don't know what's underneath it and how far you could continue those garden beds, you could do that temporary paddock thing over here, machete chop your way through and put your temporary paddock in here with your electric and train them in this area. And that way they do all the work of clearing this out for you. And then you can look and see, okay, we want our garden, I can go another 10 feet with those garden beds. On the other side of that's where I'd put the fence. Just on the other side of...
So that means then getting the goats before we have the whole entire perimeter fence done.
No. What I'm saying is, if you do that whole entire perimeter fence, all the way up to there, and then bring it up, where you're not going to be running garden beds. Okay. So we know we're not running garden beds down here, right? No garden beds over here. So run it where it's going to be easy. So run that, from your property line over there and run it up this way, or maybe straight behind your deck kind of thing. I don't know, wherever you want it. And run it up here to where we know we're not taking garden beds over this way. giant rocks in here, you know, up, I'd say about here-ish. I know we're not taking garden beds over down there, but I don't know about this right here. So put in all your your permanent perimeter fence up to here. And then this could all be temporary with those panels. But if you use T-posts with those panels, they're not going through that. It's as good as the permanent fencing, except it's easily removed and reconfigured. And so you have an H-brace here, and then you can just change where that route goes, depending on what you decide in this area. If you decide you want a little bit more garden space that way, or you just want to shoot straight up there to the building.
Okay.
That just makes it easy. And who knows? Maybe you get those goat panel sections put up, and you end up with this little goat panel corral. That's the training area, and that looks great. You like it, it works, and you just leave it. The permanent fence comes right up to there, and it just stays like that. Because now you have a little corral that, if you ever get new animals that need to be trained, that need to be kept separate, or a male animal that needs to be kept separate from the females, or vice versa, you've got a space where you can keep them. And it's always nice to have some contained space where you can put those animals in an emergency. Like, a tornado came through and there's 5 trees on my fence and I'm not going to be able to get it fixed for a week. Emergency, animals go in there, they get food brought to them, water is in there. Now I can fix that and not have to worry about them ending up on the highway. That's just one of those things where if you start modular, you can end up permanent, or you can keep it modular and flexible. Again, I don't like for instance, Joel Salatin, he always recommends that you don't put permanent fence for your paddocks until you've had temporary fence in the exact same spot for, I think, 3 years running. If this is like broader scale stuff, but the principle still applies. If you're doing broad scale cyclic cell grazing, for instance, and for 3 years in a row, well, we've just kept this fence right here and it's still there from 3 years ago, that's a good place to put a permanent fence. But if you're always moving it, it's obviously not a good idea to have a fence right there, because you always need that space. But when it comes to like perimeter fencing, that just goes where it goes. You know, we don't want them on the road, so we keep them from those barriers. And then you might end up years down the road deciding, okay, we don't need this permanent fence right here from there to there, but that's 200 feet. We can remove that and move that permanent fence 200 feet that way, because you might decide we want, they cleaned it up so nice, it looks beautiful, and we want 200 feet down to the creek bottom, and then we want 200 feet on the other side before that fence starts. And so you might just fence that way and then down so that you can have this unobstructed view, because you might decide, okay, we've got all this water running through, and then we put a little small pond down there, and then we put another little small pond down there, and then we put a little solar pump that whenever the sun's shining, it's pumping water up 10 feet in elevation, so that we got some trickling water.
That's so nice.
You know, that would be nice.
Maybe this whole side needs to be temporary then.
Yeah, that's...
I like the idea of...
Well, it's just expensive to run that all the way over there. Because each one of those panels is like $60
Okay.
versus $250 for 350 feet of fence.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But you certainly could. I mean, you'll have uses for them, but I mean, that's a ways to go.
Yeah.
16-foot panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Probably 10 of them. So it's like $600 just in the wire, not the posts.
Okay. And then I guess if we always, you could just move a permanent fence.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna pause you.